Imagine a cold night in the winter of 172 AD. Inside a campaign tent on the northern frontier, the wind cuts across the frozen plains and rattles the leather flaps. Outside, the fires of the Roman legions burn low. Inside, by the unsteady light of a single oil lamp, sits the most powerful man in the world. On the table before him lie urgent dispatches. Another incursion by the Marcomanni, fresh reports of the plague still ravaging cities and thinning his armies, letters from Rome, thick with rumor and veiled threat. He has already lost children to illness. He has already been betrayed by men he once trusted. The weight of an empire that stretches from Britain to Syria rests on decisions he must make before first light. Yet, Marcus Aurelius does not reach for another scroll or summon another advisor. He reaches instead for his private notebook. With slow, deliberate strokes, he writes words that were never meant to be read by anyone but himself. These are not imperial decrees. They are not speeches crafted for public applause. They are the honest, sometimes weary, sometimes luminous reflections of a man trying to keep his soul intact, while everything around him threatens to pull it apart. What we now call the Meditations began as these solitary conversations in the dark. Marcus was many things at once, and none of them easily. He was a philosopher who never wanted the throne, yet accepted it as a duty. Adopted and trained by the wise Antoninus Pius, he had been steeped in the Stoic tradition since youth, rising before dawn to study, learning to question his own impressions, to distinguish what was truly his to control from what was not. He became emperor in middle age and spent much of his reign on campaign, leading armies, negotiating with kings, and trying to hold together a civilization under strain. He was a father who buried more children than most parents ever hold. He was a husband who loved deeply in a court that fed on gossip. He was a ruler who faced constant public pressure, political theater, and the knowledge that every word he spoke could affect millions. And still, he turned inward. In an age that offered no privacy as we understand it, he created a private room inside his own mind, where he could examine his fears, correct his judgments, and remember what kind of person he was trying to become. That is why these private notes feel as though they were written for us. Consider what happens when you reach for your phone in the morning. Before you have spoken to anyone you love, before you have decided what matters today, the world rushes in. Notifications arrive like couriers from every front at once. Strangers offer opinions about your life, your choices, your worth. Images appear of people living versions of existence that make your own feel smaller. Outrage travels faster than thought. The algorithm has already decided what version of reality you will see before you have had a chance to form your own. You have not yet stood up, and already you are under siege. Marcus never silenced a notification. He never watched a video engineered to keep him watching. But he understood the danger that now lives in our pockets. The external chaos he faced, plague that emptied streets, wars that consumed generations, political intrigue that could destroy a reputation overnight, has found a new home. The battlefield has moved from the frontier and the forum into the device you carry everywhere. The invading forces are no longer tribes at the border. They are the endless scroll of other people's certainties, fears, and curated perfections. The political theater is no longer confined to the Senate. It plays out in comment sections and group chats that demand you declare your allegiance before you have even thought clearly. He knew something we have nearly forgotten. The greatest threats to our freedom rarely arrive wearing armor. They arrive as impressions, as opinions we absorb without noticing, as comparisons we make before we remember they are optional. It is not things that disturb us, he wrote to himself, but our judgments about things. That single insight, repeated across his private pages, is the thread that runs through every chapter of this book. Over the hour ahead, we will walk with Marcus through 6 territories that have become especially treacherous in our time. We will begin with reputation and the strange power that other people's opinions still hold over us, even when we know better. We will examine attention itself, how it is being mined, fragmented, and sold back to us, and what it costs to reclaim it. We will look at comparison, that ancient habit, now amplified until it rarely leaves us alone. We will consider judgment, how to see what is actually happening, without being consumed by the divisions that rage across every screen. We will explore what purposeful action looks like when distraction has become the easiest choice available. And we will end with the question of ethical connection, how to remain open to other human beings when the very tools we use to reach them so often push us further apart. None of this is a call to abandon the modern world. Marcus never abandoned his post. He did not retreat to a quiet villa while the empire burned. He governed, he negotiated, he led men into battle, and he did it while practicing these disciplines in the middle of the storm. The practices he used are still available to us. They do not require special equipment or perfect conditions. They require only the willingness to pause, to question what we have been told to feel, and to remember what is actually in our power. The same tools that steadied an emperor in a cold tent on the edge of an empire are waiting for you in the glow of your own screen. The morning reflection before the first notification, the evening review before sleep, the quiet refusal to let another person's opinion become your reality, the deliberate choice to act from virtue rather than from the need to be seen. These are small acts, but they are acts of inner freedom, and they are more necessary now than they have ever been. Marcus Aurelius did not write these words so that we would admire him. He wrote them so that he could remain himself when everything around him tried to make him something else. The same choice stands before us. The noise will not stop. The demands will not pause. But the space inside your own mind remains yours to guard. If you are willing to practice the same quiet courage that once kept an emperor steady in the dark. Chapter 1. The fragile currency of reputation, social media, praise, and the things not up to us. In the year 175 AD, Marcus Aurelius sat in the imperial box above the Circus Maximus. Below him, the chariot factions thundered around the track in clouds of dust and noise. The greens and the blues had their loyal armies in the stands, chanting, cursing, and placing wagers as if the fate of Rome depended on which color crossed the line first. Senators leaned in to whisper calculations about which faction the emperor seemed to favor that day. Poets and orators were already composing verses that would praise or subtly undermine his presence at the games. Every gesture Marcus made, a raised hand, a nod, a moment of stillness, was being read, interpreted, and turned into a public story before the race had even finished. He knew this theater was not new. It had existed long before he became emperor. What was new was the realization, sharpened over years of rule, that none of it was truly in his power. He could choose to attend the games or not. He could choose to govern with as much justice as the moment allowed. He could choose the tone of his replies to the Senate and the tone of his commands to his generals. But the stories that formed around those choices, whether he was seen as generous or cold, decisive or weak, pious or calculating, belonged to other people. The crowd's roar, the senator's private letter, the whisper in the bathhouse, these were not his to command. This is the lesson Marcus returned to again and again in his private notes. Some things are up to us. Our judgments, our desires, our aversions, and the actions that flow from them, these belong to us. Everything else, such as the opinions of others, the outcomes of events, the weather of public favor, even our own reputation as it lives in other people's minds, is not up to us. The distinction is simple to state and difficult to live. Marcus lived it under the constant pressure of an empire that watched its ruler as closely as any modern public figure is watched today. Consider how little has changed in the structure of the problem, even though the arena has moved. You open an app and see that a post you made yesterday has been noticed. A handful of likes arrive like small, bright signals of approval. Then a comment appears that misreads your intention. Within an hour, the ratio has shifted. Strangers you will never meet are arguing about what you meant, who you are, and whether you should be allowed to say such things. Your stomach tightens. You feel the old, animal urge to explain yourself, to defend, to win back the warmth of the crowd. Or perhaps the opposite happens. The post performs better than you expected. The numbers climb. Notifications multiply. A quiet, addictive glow spreads through your nervous system. Both experiences, the sting and the glow, are modern versions of the circus factions, roaring or falling silent. The scale is larger, the speed is faster, and the theater never closes. Marcus would have recognized the mechanism immediately. He wrote that it never ceased to amaze him how we all love ourselves more than other people, yet care more about their opinions than our own. We guard our bodies from injury and our time from waste, yet we hand the keys to our peace of mind to people whose faces we may never see, and whose own lives are often in greater disorder than our own. Social media did not invent this imbalance. It simply removed every natural limit that once protected us from it. In Rome, a senator could avoid the forum on a difficult day. A citizen could choose not to attend the games. Today, the arena travels with us. It sits in our pockets, lights up on our wrists, and waits for us at the dinner table. The factions never go home. The second difficulty is that the system is designed to exploit the very part of us that Marcus warned against. Algorithms do not reward nuance, patience, or quiet integrity. They reward engagement, and nothing engages the human nervous system more reliably than the threat of reputation damage, or the promise of reputation gain. A calm, careful thought is less likely to spread than a sharp, slightly cruel one. A generous interpretation is less likely to be amplified than an outraged one. The platform does not care whether the story it spreads about you is accurate. It cares only that people keep watching, reacting, and returning. In this environment, the old Stoic question becomes urgent again. Whose judgment are you living by? Your own or the crowd's? Marcus practiced a specific discipline here. He trained himself to withhold the formation of opinion when the matter was not his to decide. It is in our power to have no opinion about a thing, he reminded himself, and not to be disturbed in our soul, for things themselves have no natural power to form our judgments. Notice what he is saying. The external event, the comment, the ratio, the sudden silence where praise used to be, has no power in itself to disturb you. The disturbance arises only when you add your own judgment that this event must be answered, must be corrected, must be made to reflect well on you. Remove that added judgment, and the disturbance loses its fuel. You can test this for yourself in small ways that require no special equipment and no perfect conditions. The first practice is the 24-hour rule. When you receive a notification that stirs strong feelings, such as praise that inflates you or criticism that contracts you, do not respond for a full day. Let the impression sit. In the space that opens, ask a simple question. Is this something that actually requires my voice, or is it the arena doing what arenas have always done? Most of the time, the answer will be that it does not require your voice. The arena will move on to its next spectacle, whether you perform in it or not. The second practice is a weekly reputation audit. Choose a quiet moment, perhaps on a Sunday evening. Take a piece of paper or a note on your phone and list every opinion about you that has occupied your attention in the past 7 days. It might be the colleague who seemed cool in a meeting, the family member who liked everyone's post except yours, the stranger who quoted you out of context, or the quiet fear that people in your professional circle think you have lost momentum. For each item, draw 2 columns. In the first column, write what, if anything, is genuinely up to you about that opinion. In the second column, write what is not. You will almost always discover that the second column is far longer. The relief that follows is not resignation. It is the return of energy to the things that actually belong to you. The third practice is even simpler and often more confronting. The next time you feel moved to share something, a reflection, a photograph, a professional update, a link you believe matters, post it or send it, and then deliberately do not check the response for at least 48 hours. Treat the act of offering as complete in itself. Notice what happens in your mind during those 2 days. You may feel a low-grade itch to know how it landed. You may catch yourself constructing stories about why the numbers are what they are. These stories are the old circus factions still running in your head. The practice is not to eliminate the desire for connection. It is to stop treating the arena's reaction as the measure of whether the offering was worth making. Marcus never suggested that reputation is unimportant. He governed an empire in which perception could start wars or end careers. What he refused to do was let the management of perception become the organizing principle of his inner life. He kept returning to the same boundary. I will do what is mine to do, with as much clarity and justice as I can manage. What others make of it is theirs to carry. In our time, the boundary has become harder to see because the arena never stops offering us new reasons to step back inside it. One more reply, one more clarification, one more performance of the self we hope the crowd will approve. The difficulty is not that we sometimes care what others think. The difficulty is that we have been trained to treat their thinking as the primary source of our own stability. Social media did not create this confusion, but it has made the confusion feel like the natural state of things. Every notification is a small invitation to outsource our peace of mind. Every metric is a quiet suggestion that our worth is still being weighed in someone else's scales. We cannot control the arena. We never could. What we can control is whether we keep walking into it unconsciously, as if our freedom depended on receiving the right kind of roar. Marcus practiced this discernment in the middle of an empire that watched its ruler constantly. We are asked to practice it in an empire of screens that watches everyone constantly. The scale has changed. The principle has not. Once we begin to hold this boundary with some steadiness, another territory comes into view. The arena of reputation is noisy, but it is not the deepest place the modern world asks us to surrender. Beneath the question of what others think of us lies the more fundamental question of where our attention actually goes when no one is watching. That is the next ground we must reclaim. Chapter 2: Guarding the Citadel of Attention, Notifications, Doomscrolling, and Focused Presence. Picture Marcus Aurelius on campaign somewhere along the Danube frontier in the early 170 ADs. The morning begins before first light, with reports from scouts who have been riding through the night. By mid-morning, there are letters from Rome that have traveled for weeks, some of them urgent, some of them carrying the small politics of the Senate and the court. There are messages about his children's health, questions from provincial governors that require decisions, and the constant awareness that his own body is aging and often in pain. Messengers arrive and leave. Advisors wait outside the tent. The empire does not pause so that its emperor can think clearly. Yet, in the middle of this storm of claims on his mind, Marcus kept returning to one discipline. He trained himself to give his full attention to whatever was immediately in front of him, not to the 10 things that might happen later in the day, not to the rumor that had arrived with the last courier, not even to the philosophical reflections he loved. He tried, as best he could, to meet the present task, whether it was hearing a report, writing a letter, or simply walking between tents, with a quality of presence that the Stoics called prosoke. Prosoke is often translated as attention or mindfulness, but it carries a particular Stoic flavor. It is not a passive state of relaxation. It is an active, continuous returning of the mind to what is here and now, without being dragged away by every impression that knocks at the door. For Marcus, this was not a spiritual luxury. It was the foundation of everything else he tried to do well. If he could not keep his attention from scattering, then his judgments would be reactive, his decisions would be half-formed, and his character would slowly become whatever the loudest voice or most urgent crisis had made of it that day. This is why attention sits at the center of the Stoic path. Your judgments are shaped by what you attend to. Your actions flow from those judgments. Your character is built, day after day, from the pattern of those actions. When attention is scattered, the whole chain weakens. When attention is steadied, everything downstream has a chance to become clearer and more your own. In 2026, the claims on our attention have multiplied far beyond anything Marcus could have imagined. Yet, the principle he protected remains exactly the same. The device you carry is engineered to interrupt. Every notification is a small claim that says, "This matters more than what you were doing." The design is not neutral. Infinite scrolls are built to keep the next piece of content always just out of reach, using the same psychological mechanisms that once kept people pulling levers on slot machines. Doomscrolling, that compulsive movement from one distressing story to the next, is not a personal failing. It is the predictable result of systems that discovered long ago that fear and outrage hold human attention longer and more reliably than almost anything else. You know the cost, because you have paid it. You sit down to finish a piece of work that matters, and find yourself, 20 minutes later, reading comments on a post you did not intend to open. You promise yourself you will check one thing before dinner, and look up to discover that the evening has already changed shape. You lie in bed, meaning to rest your mind, and instead carry the weight of events you cannot influence into your sleep. These are not small leaks of time. They are the slow erosion of the capacity Marcus worked hardest to protect, the capacity to be present to what is actually in front of you. The phone has become a portable coliseum that never closes. The games continue whether you are at your desk, at the dinner table, or lying awake at 3 in the morning. Unlike the ancient arena, this one fits in your pocket and follows you into every room. It does not need your consent to begin a new round. Reclaiming attention is therefore not a matter of becoming more productive. It is the first act of inner sovereignty. It is the decision that your mind will not be colonized by every passing claim that arrives dressed as urgency. Marcus wrote to himself with a clarity that still cuts through the noise. Concentrate every minute on doing what's in front of you with precise and genuine seriousness, tenderly, willingly, with justice. Notice the quality he asked for, not grim determination, not heroic effort, precise and genuine seriousness, offered tenderly and willingly. The tenderness matters. This is not about forcing the mind into submission. It is about returning to the present task with care, again and again, when distraction pulls you away. He also reminded himself that you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. The strength arrives when you stop pretending you can control the stream of notifications and begin to exercise the real power you do have. The power to choose whether they receive your immediate attention. The practices that follow are simple in description and demanding in repetition because the environment is designed against them. Begin with notification minimalism. Turn off every notification that is not a direct message from a human being you have chosen to hear from in real time. Most of what arrives on your phone does not require your immediate presence. Batch the rest. Check email, news, and other updates at 2 or 3 set times during the day, rather than letting them interrupt whatever you are actually doing. Within a few days, the mind begins to trust that it will not be ambushed every few minutes. The constant low-level vigilance starts to ease. Next, single-tasking rituals. Choose one meaningful task each day. A conversation you need to have, a piece of writing, a walk you have been postponing, a problem at work that deserves clear thought, and give it your full attention for a set period. Close every other tab. Put the phone in another room, or turn it face down with all notifications silenced. When your mind wanders, notice where it went without scolding yourself, and gently return to what is in front of you. This is prosoc in ordinary life. You are not failing when the mind drifts. You are practicing the moment you bring it back. Add an evening attention review. Before you sleep, take 5 quiet minutes to notice where your attention actually traveled that day. Which moments felt alive and present? Which moments were spent in the coliseum of other people's urgencies? What pulled you most strongly, and what did it cost? You are not keeping score against yourself. You are gathering information so that tomorrow you can make small, informed adjustments. Attention, like any capacity, strengthens with honest, repeated review. Finally, practice the one screen at a time rule. When you are with another person, a partner, a child, a colleague, a friend, keep only one screen active and make it the one that includes them. If you genuinely need to check something, say so plainly and return as quickly as you can. The people in your life register when your attention is divided, even when they do not name it. And you register it in yourself as a low-grade sense of never quite arriving anywhere. The rule is not about perfection. It is about reducing the number of places your mind is asked to be at once. These practices will not make the modern world less demanding. They will make you less at the mercy of its demands. Marcus governed an empire while practicing this discipline in the middle of military campaigns, family grief, and political pressure. You are asked to practice it while doing work that often requires sustained thought, while raising children or caring for aging parents, and while living inside a culture that has made distraction the easiest and most profitable default. Once we begin to guard attention with some consistency, something else becomes visible. When we are no longer constantly pulled away, we start to see more clearly what we are looking at when we do look. We see the carefully presented lives of other people. We see the gap between those presentations and our own ordinary, unfinished days. And we feel the quiet, ancient pull toward comparison, the question of whether we are enough when measured against what the screen shows us. That is the next territory we must enter, carrying the same steadied attention we are learning to protect. Chapter 3: The Mirror and the Poison, Comparison, Envy, and Reclaiming Your Own Story. Marcus Aurelius knew what it was to watch other people's lives appear easier, more beautiful, or more favored than his own. He had been adopted into the imperial family and raised to rule, yet he spent years on campaign, far from the comforts of Rome. He buried his children, some in infancy, others after a few precious years, while other fathers in the Senate seemed to move through life with unbroken good fortune. He heard reports of men who had accumulated wealth and influence without carrying the weight of an empire on their shoulders. He knew that in the eyes of many, his life looked enviable from a distance. Up close, it was often lonely, painful, and marked by losses that no amount of power could prevent. Still, he refused to let comparison poison the one thing that remained his to protect: the color of his own thoughts. He understood that the mind takes on the hue of whatever it dwells upon. When we repeatedly turn our attention toward what others seem to have, their ease, their beauty, their apparent success, their unbroken luck, we begin to dye our own soul with envy, resentment, and a quiet sense of insufficiency. Marcus would not allow that dye to take hold. He kept returning to the life that was actually his, with all its burdens and all its opportunities for virtue. The problem he faced is older than social media, older than Rome itself. Human beings have always compared. What has changed is the speed, the volume, and the concentration of the poison. In Marcus's world, the curated image arrived through statues, public speeches, carefully staged processions, and the gossip of the forum. You might see a rival's new villa or hear of another man's unbroken string of healthy children. The comparison could sting, but it arrived slowly and with natural limits. Today, the curated image arrives in your pocket dozens or hundreds of times a day. Instagram stories show the golden hour of someone else's vacation, while you sit in traffic or sit with a sick child. LinkedIn posts announce promotions and excited to share announcements, while you navigate a quiet season or a difficult boss. The quiet luxury feed shows effortless elegance that required 3 hours of styling and the perfect light. The body in the mirror at the gym is compared, in real time, to bodies that have been posed, filtered, and selected from hundreds of attempts. You have felt this. You scroll for a few minutes of rest and stand up carrying a subtle shame you did not have before. Someone else's relationship looks more affectionate. Someone else's children seem more accomplished. Someone else's ordinary Tuesday appears more beautiful than your own. The feeling is not always dramatic. Often it is a low-grade ache, a background sense that your life is lagging behind an invisible standard that keeps moving. This is the ancient poison, now delivered in higher concentration and with fewer natural pauses. Marcus observed something that still cuts to the center of the difficulty. We care more about other people's opinions of us than we care about our own judgment of our own life. When we scroll, we are often not simply seeing what others have. We are measuring ourselves against what we imagine they think of us, or what we fear they would think if they saw our unfiltered days. The comparison is rarely pure observation. It is observation plus judgment. They have more. Therefore, I have less. Therefore, something is wrong with the story I am living. This judgment steals two precious resources at once. It steals attention that could be given to the actual people and tasks in front of you, and it steals contentment with the life that is already yours. Contentment does not mean you stop wanting better things or stop working toward them. It means you stop requiring the world to arrange itself so that your story looks as polished as someone else's before you are willing to value it. The soul is dyed the color of its thoughts, Marcus wrote. When the dominant thoughts are comparative, such as, why do they have what I do not? Why does their path look smoother? What does their success say about my lack of it? The soul takes on the color of envy and quiet resentment. Over time, the die becomes the background against which you see everything. A friend's good news arrives, and the first reaction is not uncomplicated joy, but a small calculation of where you stand in relation to it. A beautiful place appears in your feed, and you cannot simply appreciate it. You must place yourself inside or outside the image. The poison does not only affect how you feel about others, it affects how you feel about your own unfolding days. The practices that loosen this grip are not dramatic. They are small, repeated refusals to let the mirror of other people's presented lives become the measure of your own. One of the most direct is a comparison fast. Choose a period. 7 days is often enough to feel the difference, and deliberately reduce or remove the inputs that most reliably trigger the comparison. This might mean muting certain accounts, stepping away from a particular platform for a set time, or simply deciding in advance that you will not open the app that most often leaves you measuring your life against someone else's. The fast is not permanent withdrawal. It is a clearing of space, so you can notice what happens in your mind when the constant supply of comparison material is reduced. Many people discover that the ache lessens faster than they expected, and that what returns in its place is a quieter interest in the life that is actually in front of them. A second practice is deliberate gratitude for the unglamorous parts of your own path. Most comparison is fueled by the visible wins of others and the invisible costs of our own lives. Take a few minutes, perhaps at the end of the day or once a week, and name the ordinary, difficult, or unglamorous elements that actually give your story its particular texture and meaning. The season of caring for an aging parent. The months of quiet work that no one applauds. The relationship that is steady rather than spectacular. The body that carries you through ordinary days, even when it does not photograph well. These are not consolation prizes. They are the real material of life. When you give them attention, the highlight reels of others lose some of their power to make your own days feel insufficient. A third practice is reframing. When you see evidence of someone else's good fortune, a new opportunity, a beautiful moment, a milestone reached, pause before the comparison arises and offer a different thought. Good things are possible. Not good things are possible for me. So why haven't they arrived? Simply, good things are possible. This small shift moves the mind from scarcity and rivalry toward a wider field, in which many stories can unfold without threatening your own. It does not require you to pretend you feel no envy. Rather, it gives the envy less room to become the dominant story. These practices work because they address the mechanism rather than the feeling. The feeling of comparison is ancient and human, but the mechanism, that is, the constant supply of other people's edited lives, the trained habit of measuring yourself against them, the quiet judgment that your story is falling short, is what social media has concentrated and accelerated. When you interrupt the mechanism, the feeling has less fuel. Marcus did not live in a world without mirrors. He lived in a world of public images, political theater, and the constant awareness that other men's paths looked easier from a distance. He simply refused to let those images become the color of his thoughts. He kept returning to the burdens and the gifts that were actually his. In doing so, he protected something more valuable than any external measure of success: the integrity of his own attention and the tone of his own mind. Once we begin to see how comparison works, how it steals attention and dyes the soul, we start to notice something else. We begin to see the judgments we form, almost automatically, about everything we consume in the feed. Not only the lives of other people, but the events of the day, the opinions we encounter, the crises, and the celebrations that arrive one after another. We start to ask, with new clarity, what kind of judgments we are forming, and whether they are serving the life we are actually trying to live. That question of judgment, how we see, how we interpret, and how we keep our seeing from becoming poisoned, is the ground we enter next. Chapter 4: Assent and the Algorithm. What judgments we give to the infinite feed. Marcus Aurelius spent much of his life receiving impressions that arrived with urgency and incomplete information. A scout's report of enemy movements. A letter from Rome, carrying rumor and accusation. News of illness in the household or unrest in a distant province. Each impression carried the power to stir fear, anger, or the desire to act immediately. Marcus trained himself to meet these impressions with a particular discipline. Before he gave his assent, that is, before he said, "Yes, this is true," or "Yes, this requires my immediate reaction," he examined what had arrived. This practice of examining impressions before granting assent lies at the heart of Stoic philosophy. The Stoics understood that we do not suffer directly from events. We suffer from the judgments we add to those events. An impression arrives, a piece of news, an image, a comment, a sudden claim about the state of the world or about us. In the space between the impression and our response, we have a choice. We can give automatic assent. We can let the impression shape our emotion and our action without examination. Or we can pause and ask what is actually being presented, what judgment we are adding, and whether that judgment is warranted. Marcus returned to this boundary again and again, because he knew how easily the mind can be captured by incomplete or distorted impressions. He wrote that if you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it. And this, you have the power to revoke at any moment. The distress does not live in the event. It lives in the estimate we form and then treat as fact. He also reminded himself that you always own the option of having no opinion. About many things that arrive demanding our certainty, we can simply withhold the formation of a strong judgment until more is clear. In our time, the stream of impressions has become constant and engineered. The algorithm that shapes what appears in your feed does not exist to help you examine impressions clearly. It exists to keep you engaged. It has learned that immediate emotional reactions, such as outrage, fear, desire, tribal belonging, The urge to signal agreement or condemnation produce the longest sessions and the most shares. A nuanced report that requires context is less likely to spread than a short clip stripped of context that triggers instant judgment. An AI-generated image or video can now arrive looking indistinguishable from reality, carrying an emotional charge before any examination is possible. The pressure to have an instant take on everything, to like, to share, to comment, to declare where you stand, is not an accident of culture. It is the business model of the attention economy. You have felt the pull. A video appears of something that seems obviously wrong or obviously heroic. Before you have any larger context, before you know who filmed it or why, or what happened in the moments before and after, a judgment forms. You feel the urge to signal your response. Or a post arrives that touches a political or cultural nerve you already carry. The algorithm knows this nerve exists and serves you more of the same. Within minutes, you can move from one impression to another, each one reinforcing the judgment you formed in the first few seconds. In such cases, the faculty mark is protected. The space between impression and assent has been compressed to almost nothing. The cost is not only that we sometimes believe things that are not true. The deeper cost is that we lose the habit of examining at all. When every impression arrives already charged with the emotion it is meant to produce, the muscle of careful judgment weakens. We begin to treat our first reaction as information about the world rather than information about our own conditioning. We become, in Marcus's terms, dyed by thoughts we never chose to examine. The practice that restores this faculty is simple in form and demanding in repetition. It is the deliberate insertion of a pause between what arrives and what we do with it. Before you like, share, comment, or even allow a strong internal judgment to settle, stop for a short time and examine the impression. Ask what is actually being presented. Ask what emotion the presentation is designed to produce. Ask what judgment you are adding on top of the raw impression. Ask whether that judgment is one you would still hold if you had more context, or if the same claim arrived from a source you trusted less. This pause does not need to be long. 10 seconds is often enough to interrupt the automatic assent the algorithm is built to elicit. You can strengthen this pause with a simple question drawn from Marcus's own practice. What would be asked here if I were trying to see clearly rather than react quickly? The question shifts the mind from the tribal or emotional frame the feed encourages into a frame of examination. It does not require you to become neutral or passionless. It asks you to notice when passion is being manufactured for you and to decide whether you will give it your assent. A second practice is to deliberately consume, from time to time, content that challenges judgments you already hold, not to punish yourself or to perform intellectual openness, but to keep the faculty of examination alive. When every piece of information you encounter confirms what you already believe, the muscle that withholds assent grows weak. When you occasionally read or watch something that makes you uncomfortable or that presents a coherent case for a view you dislike, you practice the ancient discipline of not letting the first impression become the final one. Marcus did this with the reports that arrived from every corner of the empire. He could not afford to let any single impression, however emotionally charged, become the whole story. These practices matter because judgment is not a private matter. The judgments we form about what we see in the feed shape how we speak to the people around us, how we vote, how we spend our money, how we raise our children, and how we treat those we perceive as holding different views. When those judgments are formed in the compressed space the algorithm creates, they tend to be reactive, tribal, and brittle. When we reclaim even a small space for examination, our judgments become more our own and more proportionate to what is actually in front of us. Once we begin to judge with greater care, a new question naturally arises. Having seen more clearly, what do we then do? Having withheld automatic assent from the stream of impressions, how do we choose the actions that belong to us in the world that remains after the scroll ends? This is the ground we enter next. The discipline of wise judgment prepares us for the discipline of wise action, the daily work of living according to our own examined values, rather than according to the reactions the feed has trained us to perform. Chapter 5. The Busy Emperor's Secret. True leisure and purpose in an always-on world. Marcus Aurelius was, by any measure, one of the busiest men of his age. He governed an empire that stretched across 3 continents. He spent years on military campaigns, managing supply lines, negotiating with kings, and leading soldiers through harsh conditions. He dealt with the Antonine Plague that devastated cities and legions. He received constant reports, petitions, and political pressures from Rome. He was a father who had already buried several children, and a husband navigating the complexities of imperial marriage. And yet, in the middle of all this motion, he found time for philosophy. He found time for reflection. He found time to write the private notes that became the Meditations. He did not do this by waking earlier or sleeping less. He did it by refusing to confuse motion with meaningful action. Marcus understood that a day can be filled with activity and still be empty of purpose. He understood that the real work is not to do more things, but to meet the things that are already in front of you with justice, clarity, and care. This distinction is what allowed him to carry an empire without losing himself inside it. In 2026, the pressure to move faster and produce more has become almost total. The devices that once promised to free us now extend the working day into the evening and the weekend. Slack messages arrive after dinner. Email threads continue into what used to be rest. The language of hustle and grind is presented as virtue, while rest is treated as weakness or privilege. There is a constant stream of content teaching you how to optimize your morning, your focus, your sleep, even your leisure. In other words, productivity porn that turns every part of life into a project to be improved. Many people carry a quiet guilt when they are not visibly producing. The economic realities of this decade make the pressure feel necessary rather than chosen. Rent, healthcare, education, and the cost of simply living have risen, while wages for most have not kept pace. For many, the choice is not between hustle and ease. It is between hustle and precarity. Marcus offers a different measure. He would ask not whether your day was full, but whether it was well-lived. A well-lived day, in his terms, is one in which you gave your best attention and your best character to what was actually in front of you. It is not measured by the number of tasks completed or the metrics achieved. It is measured by the quality of your thoughts and the integrity of your actions. He wrote that you should concentrate every minute on doing what is in front of you with precise and genuine seriousness, tenderly, willingly, with justice. The tenderness and willingness matter. This is not grim productivity. It is the decision to meet the present task, whether it is a difficult conversation, a piece of work, or a moment of rest, as something worthy of your full presence. The difficulty in our time is that the feed and the inbox never stop offering new claims on your attention. There is always one more message that feels urgent. There is always one more article or video that promises the key to greater output. The result is a life of constant partial attention. You are never fully at work and never fully at rest. You carry the low-grade sense that you should be doing something else, even when you are doing the thing you chose. This is not leisure. It is motion without meaning. Marcus distinguished between the two. True leisure, for the Stoics, was not idleness. It was the deliberate space in which you could examine your life, strengthen your judgment, and return to your responsibilities with clearer eyes. It was the opposite of the scattered, reactive state that the algorithm encourages. When Marcus found moments of quiet on campaign, he used them not to escape his duties, but to remember why those duties mattered and how he wanted to meet them. The same practice is available to you, even inside the always-on economy. Begin with a morning intention that is different from a to-do list. Before you open your devices, take a few minutes to ask what kind of person you want to be today. Not what you want to accomplish, but what virtues you want to practice in whatever the day brings. For example, patience in the face of delay, courage in the face of difficult news, justice in the way you speak to the people who work with you or for you, clarity in the judgments you form. This intention does not need to be elaborate. It can be a single sentence you write, or simply speak to yourself, such as, "Today I will meet what comes with as much steadiness as I can manage." Marcus began many of his own reflections this way. The intention anchors you before the first notification arrives. During the day, practice the one important thing rule. Amid the endless stream of tasks, messages, and demands, choose one thing that truly matters for the kind of life you are trying to live. It might be a conversation you have been avoiding. It might be a piece of work that requires your best thinking. It might be a deliberate period of rest or time with someone you love. Protect that one thing with the same seriousness you would give to an important meeting. Everything else can be done well or left undone. This rule does not eliminate the reality of a full inbox or a demanding job. It protects you from the feeling that everything is equally important, and therefore nothing is truly important. End the day with a different kind of review than the one productivity culture encourages. Instead of measuring what you completed against an infinite list, ask 3 simple questions. Where did I give my best attention today? Where did I allow myself to be pulled into motion without meaning? What judgment or action from today would I like to carry differently tomorrow? This review is not about self-criticism. It is about gathering information so that your days slowly become more your own. Marcus practiced a version of this every evening. He examined his impressions and his conduct, not to punish himself, but to return to the work of living with greater clarity. These practices will not remove the economic pressures you face. They will not make your job less demanding or the cost of living lower. What they offer is a different relationship to the demands themselves. You stop treating busyness as proof of worth. You stop treating rest as something you must earn through exhaustion. You begin to see that a well-lived day is not the day on which you did the most, but the day on which you met what was in front of you with the clearest mind and the most intact character. True leisure and true purpose become sustainable only when they are connected to how we live with other people. The quality of your attention and the integrity of your action do not exist in isolation. They shape the way you speak to colleagues, the way you parent, the way you show up for friends, and the way you treat strangers whose paths cross yours. When you reclaim even a portion of your day from the constant motion, You create space to consider not only what you are doing, but who you are becoming in the presence of others. That question of ethical connection, that is, how we live well with the people around us in a fragmented world, is the final territory we enter together. Chapter 6: One Body, Many Screens, Justice, Kindness, and the Digital Cosmopolis. Marcus Aurelius carried a vision of humanity that was larger than any empire and more enduring than any throne. He saw all rational beings as parts of one interconnected whole, not as isolated individuals competing for advantage, but as limbs of a single body or bees within a single hive. What is not good for the hive, he wrote, cannot be good for the bee. The health of the whole and the health of the part were inseparable. To harm another person through injustice or contempt was not only to injure them, it was to injure the larger body, of which both of you were members. This was not abstract philosophy for Marcus. It was the practical ground on which he tried to govern, to make decisions in war and peace, and to meet the people who crossed his path: soldiers, senators, slaves, family, strangers, as fellow participants in the same human project. In 2026, the screens we carry make this vision both more difficult and more necessary. The distance created by a comment section or a feed can make it feel as though the people on the other side are not fully real. We encounter them as avatars, as positions, as enemies or allies, in whatever conflict is currently amplified. Tribalism flourishes because the algorithm rewards the sharpest expressions of belonging and the clearest signals of opposition. Performative activism spreads because it costs little to post a statement and costs much to examine whether our own conduct aligns with what we claim to believe. The temptation to treat people we have never met as less than fully human, that is, to mock, to dismiss, to pile on, to reduce them to a single worst moment or a single worst opinion, arrives constantly and requires almost no effort. You have seen this dynamic at work. A video circulates of someone saying something clumsy or cruel. Within hours, the comments become a contest of who can express the greatest outrage or the wittiest contempt. The original person disappears behind the wave of reaction. Their full humanity, their context, their capacity to change, the possibility that they are more than this one moment, is no longer visible. Or the opposite occurs. Someone posts a view that aligns with your own, and the comments become a festival of self-congratulation in which the other side is treated as uniformly stupid or malicious. In both cases, the hive suffers. The part that harms another part harms the whole. Marcus would not have been surprised by any of this. He knew that human beings are quick to divide into factions and slow to remember their shared nature. What he asked of himself, and what he asks of us, is that we refuse to let the distance of the screen become an excuse for forgetting that the person on the other side is a fellow human being with fears, hopes, losses, and confusions, much like our own. Justice and kindness do not require us to agree with everyone. They require us to remember that disagreement itself can be conducted without contempt, and that even when we must oppose a view or an action, we do not need to oppose the humanity of the person holding it. This is the practical meaning of digital cosmopolitanism. It is not a demand that you become neutral or that you abandon your convictions. It is the decision to remain a citizen of the larger human community, even when you are moving through spaces that reward tribalism. In your immediate circles, your family, your workplace, your neighborhood, You already know how to practice this in person. You know how to disagree with someone you care about without destroying the relationship. You know how to offer help without demanding credit. You know how to listen long enough to understand, rather than simply waiting for your turn to speak. The challenge in modern times is to extend something of that same conduct into the spaces where the other person is reduced to pixels and text. There are small, repeatable ways to do this. When you encounter a view that provokes strong disagreement, you can practice the discipline of steelmaning before you respond. Ask what the strongest version of their position might be. Ask what fear or experience might lie beneath the words they chose. This does not mean you must accept the view. It means you refuse to let your first reaction become the only reaction you allow yourself. When you see a pylon forming around someone, even someone whose words you find objectionable, you can choose not to add your voice to the chorus. Refusing to participate in collective cruelty is itself an act of justice. It costs little and preserves something essential in yourself and in the shared space. You can also choose to amplify voices that deserve attention rather than voices that simply generate the most heat. This does not require you to become a full-time curator. It requires only that when you share or comment, you ask whether you are adding signal or simply adding volume. A thoughtful reply that clarifies a misunderstanding, a link to a source that provides context the original post lacked, a quiet word of encouragement to someone who is offering something of substance. These are small contributions to the health of the hive. They do not go viral. They do not earn public credit. They simply make the digital commons slightly more habitable for everyone who passes through it. The exercises that strengthen this capacity are modest, but consistent. Once a week, seek out one genuine encounter with difference. This might mean reading an article or listening to a podcast from a perspective you usually avoid, not to argue with it, but to understand it. It might mean asking a sincere question in a comment section rather than offering a verdict. The goal is not conversion. The goal is to keep the muscle of curiosity alive, so that the default response to difference does not remain automatic rejection or automatic contempt. A second practice is to notice, before you post or comment, whether you are contributing value or simply adding noise. Value can take many forms: information, perspective, kindness, correction offered without humiliation. Noise is reaction for its own sake, performance for an audience you will never meet, or the repetition of something already said 100 times in the thread. The distinction is not always obvious at the moment. The practice of pausing to ask the question makes it more visible over time. These disciplines do not require you to withdraw from the digital world. On the contrary, they ask you to participate in it as a citizen rather than as a consumer or a combatant. Marcus governed an empire in which division, rumor, and the dehumanization of enemies were constant. He did not respond by retreating into private virtue. He responded by trying to govern with justice, even when justice was costly, and by remembering that the people he ruled, including those who opposed him, were not obstacles to his peace, but fellow participants in the same human story. The same choice stands before us. The screens will not disappear. The incentives that reward outrage and performance will not suddenly align with the health of the hive. What we can choose is whether we will add to the fragmentation or become small points of repair within it. The inner work of the preceding chapters, guarding attention, examining judgments, refusing the poison of comparison, acting with purpose rather than motion, prepares us for this outer work. When we are less at the mercy of every impression, We have more capacity to meet other people with steadiness. When we have practiced withholding automatic assent, we can bring that same clarity to our encounters across differences. When we have reclaimed some portion of our days from scattered motion, we have something real to offer rather than only reaction. The path does not end with private tranquility. It moves outward into the shared world, where justice and kindness are not optional virtues, but the daily maintenance of the body we all inhabit. With these practices in place, we are ready to consider how we carry this work forward when the pages of this book are closed and the voice you have been listening to falls silent. The disciplines are simple. The environment that resists them is powerful. What remains is the daily choice to practice them anyway. Conclusion. You have traveled with Marcus Aurelius across 6 territories that define the modern mind under pressure. You have seen that reputation, however loudly it calls, is not yours to control. You have learned that attention is the most precious resource you possess, and that it can be guarded even when the world tries to claim it at every moment. You have recognized how comparison quietly poisons the mind, and how the practice of withholding automatic judgment restores clarity. You have discovered that purposeful action matters more than endless motion, and that true leisure is not escape, but the deliberate return to what is in front of you. And you have remembered that we are not isolated selves, but parts of one larger body, that what harms another ultimately harms the whole. Marcus did not write these reflections for an audience. He did not write them to be published, admired, or turned into doctrine. He wrote them in the middle of war, plague, political betrayal, and personal grief, so that he could remain free and virtuous when everything outside him threatened to pull him apart. The pages we now call the Meditations were private notes to himself, written by lamplight in a campaign tent, or in the quiet hours between one demand and the next. They were his way of returning again and again to what was truly up to him. The same opportunity stands before you. The external pressures have changed their shape. They arrive now through screens, rather than through couriers and Senate whispers, but the inner work remains the same. You do not need perfect conditions. You do not need to withdraw from the world. You need only the willingness to practice, in the middle of whatever life you already have, the disciplines Marcus used to stay steady. Begin tonight. When the day is done and the devices are set aside, take 10 minutes and write or speak into a voice note, your own small meditation. Do not aim for eloquence. Aim for honesty. Ask yourself where you gave your power away today and where you kept it. Where did you hand your attention to something that did not deserve it? Where did you let comparison or automatic judgment shape your mood? Where did you act from purpose rather than from the pressure of the moment? Where did you treat another person, even one you will never meet, as less than fully human? One honest paragraph is enough. Do this for a week, and you will already feel the difference. Do it for a month, and the shape of your days will begin to change. Marcus reminded himself often that you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. That single realization, practiced daily, is the thread that runs through every chapter of this book. It does not remove the chaos. It gives you a place to stand inside it. When even a fraction of us begin to practice this ancient wisdom in the digital age, something quiet but powerful becomes possible. Minds grow calmer because they are no longer at the mercy of every notification and every outrage. Interactions grow more compassionate because we have practiced seeing humanity on the other side of the screen. lives grow more purposeful because we have stopped mistaking motion for meaning. And a quiet rebellion takes root. Not a rebellion of noise or spectacle, but a rebellion of attention, judgment, and care against the systems that profit from our distraction and our reactivity. The Emperor has spoken across nearly 2,000 years. He did not speak to tell us the world would become easy. He spoke to remind us that we can remain free inside it. Now it is our turn to live what he wrote in private. Your own meditations begin with the next honest paragraph you write, and with the next small choice to guard what is truly yours. The work is simple. The invitation is open. The moment to begin is now.